As you are well aware, this course was prepared to guide your rice fortification monitoring efforts. So you might be wondering, what's the purpose of a module titled Why Fortify? Rice fortification has the power to positively affect the health of those living in your household, down the street, and throughout your entire country. However, like all successful initiatives, rice fortification requires the collective support of individuals who are informed, passionate about the topic, and committed for the long term. At the end of this module, I hope you are well on your way to becoming a rice fortification advocate if you aren't one already. So let's go ahead and learn together. As a reminder, micronutrients are vitamins and minerals, such as folic acid and iron, which are needed by the body in small amounts. Despite the minimal intake required, they are vital to human development, disease prevention, and general well-being. Most micronutrients are not produced by the body, so they must be consumed. Micronutrient deficiencies may lead to visible, irreversible damage to the body. Here you see some examples of the clinical consequences caused by severe micronutrient deficiencies. Vitamin A deficiencies, for instance, can lead to Beteau spots in the eyes and ultimately blindness if the person is not diagnosed and treated. Iodine deficiencies can lead to goiter, which is essentially an enlargement of the thyroid gland. And vitamin D deficiencies can lead to rickets, or weakening of the bones. If left untreated, skeletal deformities may occur. However, even without outward clinical signs, micronutrient deficiencies can cause other harmful effects on the body. For example, vitamin A deficiency also increases an individual's risk for contracting an infection. Please note that the numbers next to the pictures correlate to the source numbers listed at the end of the presentation. In just a minute, we'll watch a short personal story about a woman born with spina bifida. Spina bifida is a birth defect that occurs around 28 days post-conception, when the neurotube of the embryo fails to close properly, leaving portions of the spinal cord and surrounding tissues exposed. Spina bifida is associated with genetic factors, such as a family history of the birth defect, and with environmental factors, such as low maternal folate levels during the first weeks of pregnancy. Complications of spina bifida vary depending on the severity of the neurotube opening, but may include fluid on the brain, loss of bladder and bowel function, and some degree of paralysis. Consuming folic acid, a form of vitamin B9, prior to and during the first months of pregnancy decreases a woman's risk of having a child affected by a neurotube birth defect. However, many pregnancies are not planned, and many women do not take folic acid supplements on a regular basis. Fortification of staple grains with folic acid, therefore, provides a level of protection for unplanned pregnancies and for pregnancies that occur where prenatal care and supplement access is limited.
My name is Francisca, and I'm born with a spina bifida. We are 8 in our family. I'm second born. Yeah, but they are all okay. They don't have any disability. I grew up in a village, back in a remote place, back in Samburu. It was really a place that nobody don't understand about what disability means. They don't have any information about disability. So they just believe that I'm a curse, you know. In our culture, they just put a poison, you know, some poison, and then they soak, and then they give a child who was born with a disability, so they can kill. So when my mother found that I was to be killed, she ran away with me. I just went to school like a normal child, but it was really hard because the school was far. It's really hard for me to walk. I don't have friends in school. No one understands me. I was really leaking, you know, all wet because I don't have any bladder control. So nobody really wants to sit with me. When I was a teenager, I was fed up because nobody loves me. My family was going for a wedding, and there's my cousin who was getting married, and I was just left in the house. They didn't want me to go with them. So that was really sad for me. I was thinking like, why? Why me? You know, why they left me at home? Because I have a disability. So I always like just left alone. Yeah, so it was really hard for me to remember that day when I was at home and people just go and left me at home. So I was saying, I think that's better for me to die. I think my grandmother was right. It's better for me to die than to live, because living in this life is just a hell. So I tried even to take a poison twice, but I didn't die. One of my uncle came to Bible school, and that time he came and just see about Kijabe and then meet some doctors. He came and tell my dad that there's a hospital. I think we can take Francesca there. I was sitting to wait for Dr. Bransford to come. I didn't know Dr. Bransford, so just waiting for the doctor to come. I had an infection with my legs, you know, it's really infection and, you know, a lot of pain. So he came and see my leg, and then he saw my back, and I was wondering, now, who told me that I have a problem in my back? Because I didn't tell him. I didn't know what's the problem. What's the problem of my urine, so, you know, my incontinence, or the problem of my leg. I didn't know. So when he came and told me about spina bifida and about my problem with the legs and the bladder and all, and I was so excited to meet him because he told me the things I didn't know. Dr. Bransford introduced me to another doctor called Dr. Kimberly, and they told me that they're going to teach me how to do CIC, how to empty my bladder. My life changed completely. The first time I used it, I emptied my bladder and I became dry. I see that I can live a normal life. They show me the love of God because they loved me, they're encouraging me, and I thank God because my dad came to the Lord. My father got saved, came to the Lord, and even my brother, even my sister. When I came to Kijabe, and then I was really transformed. I can be able to empty my bladder, I can be able to be dry, even to walk around. I can be independent, I work and get salary and have the house. At the time I say, so I can even date, I can get somebody. So I date my husband, and then I got married. And the first time when he told me that I love you, I was like, what? I said, do you know that I have a disability? He said, yes, I know you have a disability, but I love you the way you are. I'm praying for God to give me children. Yeah. Yeah.
The primary objective of food fortification programs is to improve the dietary intake of vitamins and minerals among a country's population. Over time, fortification programs will lead to improvements in the nutritional status of the population. This means, for instance, that fewer women of childbearing age in the country will be vitamin A deficient, and consequently that fewer of those same women will contract infections. So you may be thinking, there are multiple options for improving nutritional status, such as eating a variety of foods, taking supplements, and using micronutrient powders. Why would a country choose to implement a national fortification program? Good question. We'll now cover a few reasons. One primary advantage of food fortification is that consumers do not have to alter their eating habits to receive the benefits. Fortified flour, maize, and rice can be used in the same recipes as their unfortified counterparts, allowing consumers to benefit while consuming traditional foods that they enjoy. Second, in many countries, rice is a staple food eaten daily or multiple times per day by even the poorest individuals. Therefore, in countries with national rice fortification programs, one can assume that the vast majority of people have access to and consume fortified rice. Accessibility, however, is often a limiting factor for supplements and micronutrient powders due to availability and cost. The same holds true for fresh produce, depending on the viability of the land and the season of year. Third, Food fortification is supported by renowned entities such as the World Health Organization, the World Food Program, UNICEF, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and nutrition-based nonprofit organizations. And fourth, one must consider the cost of not fortifying. Anemia, which is often attributed to iron deficiency, hinders cognitive development in children and work productivity in adults. When you consider the high percentage of certain populations that are negatively impacted by anemia, you must realize that the economic burden on those countries is substantial. 3 countries have compared the costs of adding folic acid to flour with the costs of treating people with spina bifida. Each study showed significant net savings in healthcare expenses when spina bifida is prevented. Notice that these are annual savings, so every year of fortification leads to these net savings. Also note that these are considered conservative estimates. The Chile study only included surgical repair and rehabilitation costs through age 22 years. The South Africa study calculated 3 times the expected costs during infancy. The U.S. figure is highest because it accounts for lifetime costs, and it gives value to the time parents take to care for children with spina bifida. Still, the authors of the U.S. study note that they used conservative assumptions. National rice fortification programs have the potential to demonstrate similar results. Now that you have some background knowledge about micronutrient deficiencies and food fortification, let's move on to a few food fortification success stories. First up is a case study about thiamine and beriberi. Thiamine is a B vitamin which supports our body's cardiovascular, nervous, muscular, and digestive systems. You can obtain thiamine from multiple food sources including beef, brewer's yeast, legumes, milk, and whole grains. Like with other B vitamins, very little thiamine is stored by the body. It is necessary to consume thiamine daily, or risk depletion and severe clinical consequences. Beriberi is caused by thiamine deficiency. There are 4 subtypes including dry, wet, cerebral, and gastrointestinal. Individuals with dry beriberi are predominantly affected by abnormal reflexes along with diminished sensation and weakness in the legs and arms. Wet beriberi is characterized by neurological symptoms and cardiovascular issues like rapid heartbeat, edema, and ultimately congestive heart failure. Individuals with cerebral beriberi have issues with mental confusion, sight, blood pressure, and muscle coordination. Gastrointestinal beriberi is associated with nausea, vomiting, and debilitating abdominal pain. In 1886, Dutch physician Christian Eijkman arrived at Java, an Indonesian island, with one aim: to investigate beriberi. His search was initially focused on germs rather than nutrition. Other than humans, chickens are one of the only animals to suffer from beriberi. So, to start his investigation, Eijkman procured a flock. He injected a portion of the chickens with blood samples from beriberi patients. Oddly, in a few weeks' time, the entire flock started to show signs of nerve damage. Eijkman obtained more chickens and placed them far away from the others, thinking the cause was an air-transmitted pathogen. After some time, the new chickens stayed healthy, and strangely enough, the sick chickens started to get better. What Eijkman eventually found out is that nearly a month prior to when the birds developed nerve damage, all the chickens were regularly fed leftover white rice from the hospital. However, a new chef had recently been hired who refused to give the luxury rice to chickens and instead switched them back to brown rice. That's when the nerve damage disappeared. The same findings were collected at prisons in the country in 1895 by Eijkman's friend, A.G. Vorderman. He found that the prisoners who received and ate brown rice for meals had significantly fewer beriberi cases than those who consumed white rice, 1 in 10,000 versus 1 in 39 respectively. It was thus concluded that an anti-beriberi factor in the brown rice was keeping the prisoners and chickens from exhibiting signs of beriberi, and also healing those with symptoms. The anti-beriberi factor turned out to be the vitamin thiamine, which was discovered in the early 1900s and later synthesized by Dr. Robert R. Williams. Later, Dr. Williams was instrumental in a full-scale rice fortification experiment that took place in Bataan Province, a part of the Philippines. The Philippines was highly burdened by beriberi cases at the time. It was the second leading cause of deaths after pulmonary tuberculosis, and most victims were infants. Bataan was chosen due to its isolation, similar economic and agricultural conditions among the population, and unusually high beriberi mortality. The existence of a single highway in the province made it relatively easy to control the movement of rice, or so investigators thought. The province was split into two zones, a control zone and an experimental zone. A clinical baseline survey showed that 13% of the 12,800 people examined had beriberi at the start of the program in 1947. Mortality rates were also obtained for the year prior to rice fortification. Here you see two graphs. The one on the left represents the experimental zone of Bataan. The one on the right represents the control zone of the same province. Both graphs chart the beriberi mortality rate per 100,000 people in the population. Fortified rice was introduced to all municipalities of the experimental zone by October 1, 1948. Mortality from beriberi declined by 67.3% among the experimental group in the first year of the program. 111 lives were saved. During that first year, fortified rice filtered into 20 to 34% of homes in the control zone. The following year, when fortified rice was formally introduced into some municipalities of the control section, beriberi started to decline rapidly there as well. In 1949, a second clinical survey was conducted. Almost 90% of those who had originally shown beriberi symptoms had recovered. This was one of the first studies to show the enormous potential of rice fortification to protect and improve the health of populations. Dr. Reynaldo Martorell of Emory University will now share an experience from Costa Rica, a country that has reduced iron deficiency anemia through the ongoing implementation of a multi-food fortification program.
I'm Reynaldo Martorell. I'm a professor of nutrition at the Department of Global Health at Emory University. I have worked in nutrition for about 35 years. Anemia is a very low concentration of red blood cells, and its causes are many. About half of anemia worldwide is caused by iron deficiency. In some countries, genetic abnormalities like sickle cell are causes of anemia, but again, about half of all anemia is due to iron deficiency. Anemia is a very important problem in public health. It has many consequences, and a key consequence is the result of the shortage of red blood cells. And red blood cells deliver oxygen to all organs and tissues. And so if you have anemia, it means you're not getting enough oxygen, which means you feel tired, you feel lethargic, your capacity to do work is also impaired. And another consequence is that anemia can cause impairment of child development and learning. So this is an important issue that has long-term consequences for individuals and societies. It increases the risk of mortality in women at childbirth, and this is due to an interaction between anemia and hemorrhaging. A normal woman might tolerate some bleeding, but if the woman is anemic, particularly severely anemic, any amount of bleeding will cause death. Costa Rica is a small country in Central America. It's really a pioneer in food fortification. It's been fortifying, for example, wheat flour for quite a long time. It currently fortifies a basket of foods, a variety of foods including sugar, salt, flours, wheat and corn. Together with colleagues from Costa Rica, we conducted an evaluation of the food fortification program in Costa Rica. Several years ago, Costa Rica improved the quality of the iron that was being added to wheat flour, into corn flour, into milk, and began using compounds that were well absorbed. And we looked at a national survey, and we were able to compare the prevalence of anemia in both women and children before and after these changes were made, and found there was a remarkable reduction. In women, anemia was reduced from 18 to 10%, and in children from 19 to 4%. So there was evidence of a strong impact due to the fortification program of Costa Rica. There are important lessons that Costa Rica provides for other countries. In some countries, the compounds that are being used to fortify foods with iron are not very good compounds, and they may want to take a look at the program in Costa Rica and think about what they might do to improve that aspect. They also need to look at dietary surveys to see if the foods that are being fortified are being consumed by the population that is a priority population in order to reduce anemia. And they can also look at the monitoring system that Costa Rica has, and also at the design of the evaluation that Costa Rica used. I think if countries do this, they will improve the impact of their programs.
Finally, Dr. Godfrey Oakley of the Center for Spina Bifida Research will share the global experience of reducing neurotube defects through flour fortification with folic acid.
Spina bifida and anencephaly are two of the most severe and common birth defects, and they both occur very early in pregnancy. What's going to be your brain and your spinal cord is like a flat sheet of cells. And in order to make a so-called neural tube, you have to fold this up, okay? And it sort of starts folding up about where the middle of your back is. And then there's a zipping process, and it zippers up this way, and if that zipping process doesn't work, you get anencephaly, which is fatal in and around the time of birth. When the zippering process doesn't work down toward your bottom, you get spina bifida because the spinal cord doesn't form quite well. How much disability you have depends upon where the zippering process stops. And the least involved children with spina bifida at least have paralysis of bladder and bowel. And of course, the further up the spinal cord you go, the more disability you have, and that leads to kids on crutches and in wheelchairs for most of their life because they've lost the ability to walk normally. One of the most important public health stories of our time is the discovery that a simple B vitamin folic acid will prevent these two terrible birth defects. The foundation for making this go away is providing women with food that has folic acid that has been added to it, because then we know every woman has enough at the time they become pregnant. In the U.S., for example, if you want to sell a product that's a grain product and it has the word enriched on it, since 1998 you have been required to have folic acid in it. And that has prevented almost all of folic acid preventable spina bifida and anencephaly in the U.S. It is close to a miracle. Among other things, it's so cheap to do, so inexpensive to do. In the United States, it costs 1 penny per person a year to make this birth defect go away. We've just been looking at what it means just for India alone. India has over 100,000 babies born with spina bifida and anencephaly that folic acid alone can prevent. And if we were to get women in India with enough folic acid, this birth defect would essentially go away. I look at this, if India can make smallpox go away, if India can make polio go away, India can make folic acid preventable spina bifida go away. When you put folic acid, like in the U.S. in the flour, you make folate deficiency anemia go away. There is a very recent and wonderful paper from China that suggests that at people in China at the lower half of the serum folate levels, taking folic acid will prevent half of first-time strokes. Half of first strokes. An enormous potential additional benefit to fortifying flour. Putting folic acid in flour really is as good as, it's the best thing since sliced bread. There isn't any question about that.